I guess these, you could say, were the first hints that something else was going on, other than it being a strict good versus evil sort of thing. But also that doesn't really fit Kishotenketsu. So, in Kishotenketsu, if you don't know, you probably do if you like anime, and you probably looked up their storytelling style. Usually, villains aren't really villains. They are, but there's a very strong tendency in Kishotenketsu for villains to become allies. I won't say anything else beyond that. I will just say that there seem to be hints that maybe there's something going on that we don't know about. So the biggest thing does this, so we'll just go over this real quick. So you have the drama triangle, which is from Freytag's triangle from, I think, like the 17, 18, 19, 17 or 1800s. And so that has been iterated on in the West to get what we call the story triangle in the West, or the plot triangle. So the biggest thing about Freytag's triangle is that it is villain-centric. So you have your protagonists, the villain's trying to do something, or is being evil or something, and the protagonists are there to essentially foil the villain's plans, which ends up in this big crescendo, this big climax that's usually more skewed towards that's more at the end of Act 2. Sometimes the villain dies here, and then Act 3 is the démonté, which is the unraveling of the plot. It's a French term. And other times, you have this big conflict, and then things sort of steadily go down from there. And you might have some really big event right at the very, like, almost at the very end of the story, where, like, the villain is killed or imprisoned or something. But usually in Western stories, there is a solid villain. The solid villain dies at the end, or somewhere in the story, and then they're dealing with what's left, all the remnants of that, which potentially is a bigger problem. Which can sometimes present itself as an even worse problem when things aren't united, that the heroes then take care of. Kishotenketsu, however, is Eastern storytelling. By the way, there's also African storytelling, which I know practically nothing about except that it exists, and I don't think a lot of people have really covered it, really. All I know is that it seems to go back and forth between, in African storytelling, my understanding is that you go back and forth between, like, your city life, your tribal life, your city life, your tribal life, and, like, stuff's happening with that, and, like, I don't know anything about it beyond just, like, snippets. In Kishotenketsu, however, you have this interesting little element where you don't necessarily need a villain. That's the interesting thing about Kishotenketsu, which is why when you look at any kind of slice of life comic, anime, show, sitcom, sometimes there's no villain. Like, if you look at Friends, which was like a 90s sitcom, I think it was 90s, all the characters just kind of screwed around. Friends is what... what was the show about, like, the quantum physicists? And, like, it had that, like, nerdy professor who probably had autism and... Big Brain Theory? Big Bang Theory, that's it. The Big Bang Theory is basically just like Friends. Like, that's basically what it is. It's what it was based on. How about Friends, but instead of them just being random city people, let's make them college professors, because being in academia is vogue right now. So anyway, with Kishotenketsu, you don't need a villain. There are 4 acts, not 3. By the way, in Western storytelling, there are 4 acts and female storylines, and there are 3 acts and male storylines. There's technically a 4th act in the male storyline, but it's so short and truncated that it doesn't really matter. You can think about it more as just a conclusion of the story. Whereas in female Western stories, the 4th act is actually like a full thing. It's actually its own act. Okay, so Kishotenketsu. You have the beginning, the initial conditions of the story. A girl shows up in a town. She's got half of a huge scissor blade, and she's looking for the person who killed her dad. We are talking about Kill la Kill. Kishotenketsu stands for something. Yeah, so it's Ki's the initial part. Show is sort of like development. 10 is where things sort of like change. In the West, we like to call it twist, but it's not necessarily a twist. It's more of like, it's more of things just become slightly confounded, if you will. Things evolve. What's actually happening is revealed in a lot of ways. There's some sort of development. And then yeah, Fred. I don't think I've ever seen that one. And then Ketsu is the conclusion of the story. So in Kill la Kill, I'm just about to completely spoil Kill la Kill on a like overall series level. So it starts off, girl shows up in town wanting to avenge her father, find out who killed him, and avenge him. So, one thing about Kishotenketsu is the protagonist usually finds a loyal character who will support them very quickly. So, our protagonist finds her loyal dog character who pretty much supports her every step of the way, is constantly, she's the infinite cheerleader, essentially. Except for like in maybe a joke episode here and there, where she's she's against her for some reason. Then we meet the villain and her 4 sort of knights, her 4 knights of doom, if you will. And each one of these knights have their own sort of storyline, their own distinct personalities. One is, say, super loyal, so as it turns out that this other character has her own nakama as well. That's another thing about Kishotenketsu, is you have the nakama. I think it's called the nakama, or nakama. I think it's nakama. And so this is just all the supporting characters. So if you look at Power Rangers, you have the Red Ranger, who's the main character, and then all the other Rangers are part of the Red Ranger's nakama. So it's like the guy who gives the missions, whatever it is. So we look at Kill la Kill. We have the protagonist has her own nakama. The antagonist has her own nakama. And so the antagonist nakama is Mr. Loyal, Mr. Smart, Miss like crazy music, and then Mr. like Blood Knight, I guess. Berserker type character. The ultimate swordsman, that kind of thing. And so what you have is like this entirely different nakama with its leader and then all the other characters. The easiest way to think about most nakamas is what's called the 5-man band, if you want to find it on TV tropes. And a 5-man band is just how nakamas typically like end up. It was so successful in Kishotenketsu based stories that we started incorporating it in Western stories. But it just is what it is. So, okay, so Ki. So the main character shows up. She has her friends show up. She is fighting these evil knights, these bad guys who she believes is who killed her dad. Ketsu, things progress. She is becoming stronger, more dangerous. She's got this new outfit that gives her superpowers while making her look incredibly skimpy in a very funny, sort of stupid way. And because it's anime, and then things keep progressing forward. She's getting closer and closer to defeating all these knights and getting to the main boss character who she's constantly butting heads with. But then 10 happens. The evolution of the story, the twist, as the West likes to call it, which is where it turns out that these people that she's been fighting against actually have the same goal as her, or they have a similar goal. They want to foil the people who killed her dad, and they've been building this entire town, this entire university, and fighting her and training her basically to make her be able to be on the same level as them or to exceed them so that they can all get together and defeat the bad guy. And then Ketsu is where they actually go and defeat the final boss, the actual problem, the actual evil of Kill la Kill. And so that's Kishotenketsu. Now, once you understand the story structure and how the beats tend to go, it is almost incredibly obvious what is going to happen in almost every anime you watch. And the ones that sort of defy Kishotenketsu a little bit, those become the interesting ones. Let's take Inuyasha. Okay, so protagonist is Kagome, right? Kagome? And she runs into this loyal dog guy who fights her in the very beginning because that's how Kishotenketsu happens. She gets this magic necklace on him where she can basically just say one command word and it slams him into the ground. However, she has something that he wants for some reason. And so to get that, he decides to accompany her and help her and protect her. I think it's because she looks or smells like his girlfriend or something, his previous lover, or descendant of that person or something. So, okay, he's traveling with her and they're doing things in feudal Japan as she uses a magic portal to go back to the modern era. And, okay, sounds good. They meet actual villains along the way. But then they meet this evil priest guy who's sucking things into his hand to destroy them. And, he's fighting demons to do that, so they fight. And eventually, they beat him to the point that he can't really fight back all that much, and he's getting ready to do his whole suicide, cut open his magic space black hole in his hand thing to basically kill everyone. And then they're like, look, why don't we have similar goals. We're fighting demons. We're trying to make the world a better place. Why don't you just join us instead of dying? So he thinks about it. He's like, yeah. Alright. So then they meet this, and I think they meet this little fox kid who's little kitsune kid who is also starts off as a villain, who's kind of like a joke villain who can't really do anything. And so they recruit him because I guess he's just trying to be able to feed himself and support himself and stay alive. So, easier to stay alive with them, right? So then they meet this bandit lady with a big cat. And so she's a villain at first. And then over the course of an episode or two, they beat the crap out of her, or they find out that, she's also enemies with this other guy that they're enemies with. And they're like, yo, we both want to curb stomp the same person. What do you say? Oh yeah, let's do it. And so then they're buddies. That's right. They got his legs in a vice. They've got a pole right on top of his knees. They're starting to bend it backwards and you want to join us yet? No. Ah! Want to join us yet? Yes! You see, they've already torn off his kneecaps and they're getting ready to tear off his lower legs. He's like, wait! I join! And they're like, okay, fine. And they put his kneecaps back and, use healing or something. Horribly maim him. But that's sort of how Kishotenketsu works. There's initial conditions, there's the evolution of those conditions, there's this evolution, there's initial conditions, the progress of the initial conditions, then some sort of development that basically makes it to where everyone is usually fighting on the same side, and then the conclusion of that. There's a reason why, if you understand Kishotenketsu, then the moment you see Vegeta, and Vegeta is almost completely opposite of Goku, that you know almost immediately that they're going to become allies at some point. Because if you watch Dragon Ball as well, then you know, well, Yamcha was a villain who's now a buddy. Tien was a villain who's now a buddy. The small guy that I don't remember the name of was a villain who's now a friend. The small guy is based off of, like, I think Japanese or Chinese, like, vampires or something. They're usually, like, presented like this and they hop forward. That kind of thing. So if you and Piccolo was also a villain who Goku beat the crap out of and was like, we just team up. so yeah, it just is what it is. So you pretty much already know. And then I think in, like, later DBZ stuff, like, even Frieza and Goku team up. And I mean, Frieza's supposed to be, like, one of the big bads. And, like, I think friggin' Boo and Goku team up at some point and, like, become allies. So it really is just how the storylines tend to work out in Kishotenketsu. Now, it's nice. But anyway, yeah, story structure. What's interesting about this, by the way, is that the types of stories you consume influence the way you think. So, in Western media and also Western culture, we're almost always looking for someone who's the reason for why bad things are happening. It isn't just that bad things are happening because it's just, a consequence of our broken system. No. Someone's responsible. That's because of how our stories are formed. Like, you look at the Bible, the Bible, if you like. Who's the bad guy? It's supposed to be Lucifer or something? I don't know, I'm not a Christian. So, you have Lucifer, aka Satan, right? Yeah, I know. Someone is to blame for me stubbing my toe. That is entirely correct. It's someone's fault. I'm going to blame the political leader I don't like. It's your fault. Ow. But, like, it's pretty much endemic for almost all of Western culture. For Western culture, many major Western religions, that there's some bad guy or bad force that is to blame for bad things happening. Despite the fact that they're like, good God, or good whatever deity is, like, usually all-powerful, so how the hell is this happening? It's like, alright, we have the warden of Super Jail. Who basically says, now you can't get out of it. Now I'm all powerful and you're not allowed to do things. And then, evil prisoner goes and does bad things. And Super Warden says, eh. It doesn't make any sense because it just doesn't make any sense. But, theology aside, just walking by the MC, then you get beaten up because some random person killed his parents. Yeah, that's kind of right. That is kind of how it plays out sometimes. So in Kishotenketsu-centric, in cultures that use Kishotenketsu storylines, they're not necessarily looking for the bad guy to blame. Instead, they're just trying to find out, what's the problem? How can we fix the issue to sort of pull things back? So when something bad happens, their question is more of, why is this happening? What systems are running away to make this happen, and how can we fix it? That tends to be the issue. So I'll give you an example. In Japan, they have an incredibly low crime rate, and they have an incredibly high conviction rate. Okay, so this is because of something called, I think it's called the hostage prosecution or something like that. Basically, if you get arrested for a crime in Japan, they can keep you for like 9 months or something like that, like 3 to 9 months, something ridiculous by American standards, where basically they can tell you that they can hold on to you as long as they want until you confess to this crime, and then they will convict you of the crime based on your confession, unless they find somebody else who's more responsible for the crime, and you don't really have a choice about this because they think you did it. Yeah, if you do a crime in North Korea, that's just how North Korea works. It's how they put you on labor camps and, work you to death. But that's sort of how Japan works. So as a result of that, most of the time, people just try to keep their noses clean. And you already have a collectivist culture that doesn't really commit a whole lot of crimes, so it makes perfect sense. But anyway, death by firing squad and nuclear test. That's right. It's both firing squad and nuclear test. The bullets are made of a material that produces alpha radiation, so they shoot them in non-fatal areas, and then the alpha radiation kills them. All right.